Right in 1996. I'm not going to bore you with this detail. Instead, let's jump to the next discussion. Next slide, please. So, it's been 11 years since the signing of the peace agreement. By its very essence, when you talk about peace agreement, what does it promise you? Peace. Claro. 11 years ago, government and the MNLF promised peace and peace dividends. 11 years ago, the major dominant armed group in Suluk, Tawi-Tawi, Basilan really was the MNLF. That was 11 years ago. Now, you've got the MNLF, you have the MILF in some areas, you have the Abu Sayyaf, you have kidnap for ransom gangs, you have narco politics. So in 11 years, there has been an escalation of conflict. So, can we therefore say that there has been successful implementation of the peace agreement? Can we? Not really, right? How can it be that effective if there has been more conflict instead of less? So we have started looking into the peace agreement to determine exactly what happened with implementation. Next. Next. This table you have, and I'm going to skip them. This just basically shows you the conflict of opinions between the government and the MNLF with various sections of the peace agreement. Basically, government is saying we have implemented 100% of what we promised. And the MNLF is saying, no, you didn't. And it gives you the specifics of the differences of opinion. You know this saying about the glass that's half empty and half full? At least may tubig, right? In the situation of the peace agreement, you have a situation where government is saying the glass is full and the MNLF is saying the glass is empty. So kung ganoon, paano mo ipagtutugma? To be able to do that, pagtugmain yung different conventions, you need to do further analysis of what really happened to the peace agreement. And that is something that we've attempted to do. So we're providing you the hard copies of this so you can take a look at the modes of contention between government and MNLF. Can we just skip into the autonomy? So every point, funding, there's disagreement. Next. Security issues, there's disagreement. Okay, let's look at this one. The peace agreement promised autonomy in lieu of the fight for independence, because the MNLF and the MILF have been saying the Moros are independent people. We are sovereign powers. We had the Sultanate, and the Sultanate were sovereign states. We used to sign agreements with the Americans, with the Spaniards, and when you sign treaties with foreign powers, that means they treat you as an independent power yourself. So there's sovereignty there. Based on that, the MNLF and the MILF fought for independence. When we started the peace process, the MNLF agreed in exchange for independence they would accept autonomy. Autonomy is not exactly, it's not independent, but it supposedly gives you the power so that you can govern yourself. So this concept of self-determination is something that is at the heart of autonomy. So, the peace agreement granted full autonomy to the Muslim areas in ARMM. To be sure that you could implement full autonomy, you have an armed government. You're familiar with the armed government, right? They elect every 3 years a regional governor, a regional vice governor, a full slate of an assembly. We have our own Congress. We call it the Regional Legislative Assembly. And we're supposed to have our own executive group that would now decide how to run the government. We have a legislative group. We have a special regional security force to take care of security concerns. We have our own educational system because we have some uniqueness to our culture that we put a lot of stock on Islamic education. So this is supposed to be incorporated into the system that we live by. And then we're supposed to have our own economic and financial system because again, Islamic economic and financial systems are a little different from the normal financial and educational systems that you have here. So all of this was agreed upon, that we would be able to live as Muslims, and this is in the peace agreement, and this is also part of the congressional, the law, the RA 9054 that was passed to provide autonomy to armies. Next. So again, there are contentions, there are conflicts here of appreciation of what really happened to the implementation of the peace agreement. And we will again provide you copies of this so that you are familiar with the details. Next. 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 Okay. So the agreement was autonomy in exchange for independence. When you talk about autonomy, what does it mean? It means you are no longer controlled by a central government. The Muslims of ARMM will be able to govern themselves. They have their own legislative assembly, so they can pass laws with which to govern themselves. Is this true? Is ARMM truly autonomous? To be politically autonomous and free, it presumes that you have fiscal autonomy. That means you can support yourself. You are not tied to the purse strings of anybody. I always make this analogy. You are all students. Are you independent? Or are you dependent on your parents?
Yes.
Right? So, think of yourself, think of ARMM as somebody like, let's assume that ARMM is a student here, because the similarity is quite striking. You have to go to your mother to ask for money so you can go on a date. Right? ARMM is similar. It really cannot do very much on its own. It always has to ask for money from central government. If your mother says no, you can't go anywhere. If Malacanang, CBM, Congress says no to arms, it also cannot go anywhere and cannot do much. Therefore, you are not autonomous, neither is arms. Because somebody else dictates how it can develop itself, how it can govern itself, because it has no fiscal autonomy. Next. And let me show you the statistics that will really clearly illustrate this situation of lack of fiscal autonomy. In 1996, when government promised autonomy, it assumed, or at least the Muslim communities assumed, that the money would be provided that would now allow ARMM to govern itself and to provide basic services for its people. To do this requires money. So, since you have a peace agreement, the assumption is there would be a little bit more provided to ARMM, right? I mean, if you read the newspapers today, that is the impression that Muslim Mindanao is getting so much money we don't know what to do with it. Is this correct, an impression?
No.
Kasi araw-araw, di ba, millions and millions of dollars are being poured into ARMM. Let's take a look at the reality. And so this is a comparison of regional expenditures. This is provided by national government. 1996, that's when the agreement was signed. Look at